So the next interview question that we are going to talk about is the difference between all versus all selected versus the all except function in Power BI. Now to explain the difference between these three functions, I will make use of this table. I will also explain you with the help of a practical example, and at the end I will give you a story to understand and remember the difference between these three functions so that you can answer this question easily in the interview. So let's start with an example. Now within our example we are using this table which has got product, region, date and sales amount. So the next thing that I have done is I have used all function, all selected function and the all except function within the measure. So let us see one by one. So if we have a look at the measure for all function, what we have got is calculate function, and within the calculate function we have got sum of the sales and the all function. Now the important thing to note here is within the all function we are using product column. Okay, please take a note of this. We are using product column. Then I have used similarly all selected function. Again we have done the same thing. Calculate function, within that we have got some expression, and within the all selected again we are using product column. Okay, and third measure that we have is all except measure, for which similarly we have calculate function. Within calculate I have got some expression, and then we have used all except. Slight difference is that for all except function we are firstly defining the table and then we are telling the product. So what we understand is in all the three measures we have used three different function, but we are filtering based on the sales product. So the next thing that I have done is I have imported all the three measures into this particular table. Now as we can see, this column is for the all function, this column is for the all selected, and the third column is for the all except function. Now what we are observing is that after we import these three measures, for all function and for all selected, we are able to see the total sum. That means the existing filters have been ignored. Okay, but for all except it is not ignored, because we can see 480, 480, 580, 580. That means for all and all selected, visual level filters are ignored, whereas for all except, visual level filters are not ignored. So we can see the same thing mentioned in the PPT. For all selected, visual level filters are ignored, yes, but for all except it is not ignored. I hope you are clear until this point. So the next thing that I have done is I have created one more visual, which is a slicer. Now within the slicer we are filtering the data based on the product. So like here we are filtering the data based on the product only. We call this slicer as an explicit filter. Okay, this is a visual level filter. This table is a visual level filter, whereas this slicer is the explicit filter. So let's just see what exactly happens when we select the values from the explicit filters. What is the impact? Let us just see. So at this point of time, as you can see, 1620, 1620 and 480. So the moment I am selecting the explicit filter, let's just say I'm selecting only three products, then what exactly happens? 1620. That means there is no impact on the all product. What does that mean? That means explicit filter has been ignored. That's why we do not see any change. So that's what mentioned here. Key, that's what mentioned in this particular PPT as well. Key, for all function, explicit filter will be ignored, yes. Okay, but when we talk about the all selected function, we can see that in the case of all selected function, explicit functions are not ignored, because these are not ignored, we can see the values are changing. Okay, and the third thing that we are observing is in the case of all except, there is no impact even after selecting the explicit filter. So that is what mentioned in this particular PPT as well. So what do we understand from this example? When it comes to all function, it ignores both visual filter as well as the explicit filter. However, when we talk about all selected function, it surely ignores the visual filter, but it does not ignore the explicit filter. And in the case of all except, visual filters are not ignored, whereas the explicit filters are ignored. That's what we saw. So after I explain this example, you may find it a bit confusing and difficult to remember and understand this. So what I will do, I will try to make this easy by explaining this thing with the help of a story. To understand the story, you need to assume that this visual label filter will act as a family, whereas this explicit filter will act like a friends. Now, what exactly happens in this story? Let's see. So if we talk about the all function, it will ignore visual as well as explicit filters. What that means is all function will be ignoring family as well as friends. So he's like a spoiled brat. Whereas if we talk about the all selected function, it ignores the family, but it does not ignore the friends. Okay. Whereas the all except is like a first bencher who does not ignore the family but surely ignores the friends. So that's how you can remember and understand the difference between these three functions. Now at this point of time, I can stop the session, but I want you to have the in-depth understanding. Okay. So what I will do, I will create one more filter, and this filter would be for the region. See, what I want you to understand is at the beginning of the session, I told you specifically that within the all function we are using product column. That means it will ignore the filter context for only product column. This is the region column. So will it ignore for region column? No, it will not ignore for region column. That's what I wanted to show you before we close the session. Okay. So until now what we have seen is in case of all functions 1620 never changed whether we used visual filter or we use explicit filter. Okay, in both the case this did not change. But why did it not change? Because the filter was applied on the product column and both these have the product column. Now what I'll be doing, I will be applying the filters on the region column. Do you see region column here? No, you do not see. That means filter can be applied to the region column. It will not ignore the filter for region column. So let's just see if that really happens. So I am selecting east. So as you can see, now we can see the values are changing. We do not see 1620, right? Why is that happening? As I said, the filter is applied only for the product. So whatever the restrictions were, those were only for the product columns and not for the region column. Similarly, and same thing is applicable for the other two as well. So this is the last thing that I want you to remember and understand, that whatever we discussed was specifically about the product column or the column that we are mentioning in this particular function. So one last thing before we stop the session, some topics we do not understand just by watching the videos, and that is absolutely okay. So what you need to do is you need to practice these topics. I'll give you the data set. You please practice it 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, okay? As much as you can. And then you will have your own conceptual understanding on this topic. So this is my request to all of you. Don't just watch this video. Please ensure that you practice it a lot, okay? And I'm sure that it will help you. Thank you so much.